Welcome to Om on the Range, where we share the practice of meditation, the wisdom of Western Buddhism, and the refuge of our community. Whether you are new to meditation or a longtime practitioner, committed or curious, this offering is here to share solutions, stories, and support. Happiness and better health are available to everyone. It just takes practice. This is Om on the Range. We've hit May and spring has sprung. An annual event for this time of year is Mother's Day. This week we discuss the holiday and the role that moms play in our lives and in our practice. I'm your host. My name is Whit, and this is episode 41 of Om on the Range. I want to welcome everyone. We're glad that you're here. It's become an unofficial but highly popular tradition to have Jordan Collie co-host whenever we have a holiday. And this week is no exception. So we welcome back the High Priestess of Holidays. Jordan, welcome. How are you?
Great. High Priestess of Holidays. I'm going to add that to my resume.
Yeah, that'll look good. That'll be an easy one to explain to a prospective employer. You've been doing okay?
Yeah, I've been doing well. Like spring has sprung. The leaves are green on the trees. I just associate my emotions to the nature around me, I feel like anymore. Now that there's so much green, I feel pretty green and happy and lucky and I'm happy to have the flowers blooming and so much life around me. All the baby bunnies when I pull into my driveway running around makes me happy.
Yeah, do you notice a big mood change with the seasons? Like is winter hard for you or do you just live through that as well?
I try to romanticize the seasons so I like them more.
Yeah.
I understand like a period of rest is important. And so I try to look at winter like that period of rest. So you have the spring energy, the summer energy and can kind of put forth um the energy to handle the heat and all of that. I mean, it's pros and cons. If I'm in a negative mind state, then yeah, it's depressing when it gets dark and it's, obviously I like to think when the sun goes down at 9 o'clock, I'm woohoo, I'm happy. But I just think that life is just up and down and it doesn't really matter of the seasons, but it's kind of fun to just kind of romanticize it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. I've also found that if the better I am at accepting, as an active strategy for dealing with those things that are out of my control, like seasons and weather and people and really everything else. It goes from just, hey, that's a good idea. It'll save me some suffering. You actually transition to a point where you start to really be able to enjoy all of it. I was just curious if that's true for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly anytime I'm in winter, I'm like, oh, this is the coldest it's ever been, and this is the saddest I've probably been. I don't know. I'm kind of dramatic, and I don't always think that that's real because I think I just forget every year that winter kind of is hard, and I think in Missouri too, because when you go to Colorado and there's cabins and mountains and I don't know, you're more accepting there. So I think it's kind of funny or like when it's hot and you're at the beach, you're just more accepting. So Missouri's like a funny place to live in if, I know we have listeners, but particularly our TBC is in Missouri. So the way that we experience the seasons change isn't super dramatic. Like, I mean, of course, there's greenery and there's trees. My dad just came back from living in Arizona, and the whole time he kept defending that there was color in the desert, and I just didn't have the heart to tell him.
There's one color in the desert.
Exactly.
It's sandy is what we call it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So
well, I think that's pretty good. I think we're 5 minutes into it and we have yet to touch the topic. So
nice.
that's probably par for you and I hosting this episode or this podcast. So let's jump into it. Mother's Day is coming up. It'll be next week. Actually, it'll be this Sunday, but it really doesn't matter. It's coming up. You are a mother. So let's start with a semi-easy question. What's the holiday mean to you or for you?
I know that I used to like Mother's Day when I was a kid because I was creative. So I liked to draw like my hand and trace it and you know, bring my mom proudly my crayon artist
Yeah.
for the fridge. And that was always really nice. And then as I, had kids, it was something that I tried not to put expectation on because, your kids sometimes at this point, I have a 17-year-old and a 1-year-old. So it's very strange in the sense of expectations when it comes to Mother's Day now. You know, my 17-year-old, she's like very loving and doting. So she's like, what jewelry do you like? And and my 1-year-old could care less, so I'm somewhere in the middle. Like I could care less because every day is Mother's Day, truly, when you're a mom. And then, it doesn't, I think like most holidays, and probably I've said this since we talk about holidays often, is to me, it orients a lot around what should you buy your mom, which is very weird. Um, because gifts shouldn't be given, I think, just on a particular day. I guess it's good to allot them to some degree because maybe you wouldn't give gifts ever if you didn't have a prompt. But, I don't think it should be centric towards just buying things or, get out and make something for your mom. I don't care how old you are. She'll like it.
Right, right. I think also with something like the relationship, and I know everybody's relationship with their mother is different, but what I was going to say was, like you said, every day is kind of Mother's Day because there's such that heavy connection. Um, it makes me very empathetic and sympathetic for people that don't have a close relationship with their mom. My mom's passed now, but you know, but I always had that, and frankly, it's hard to comprehend if you don't have that. You take it for granted. Even now, as much as I miss her and as much as I wish I could talk to her, I feel like that generations, you have a better understanding of how the relationship works when you're talking about your children. It's harder to put it in perspective when you're talking about your parents because you were the kid and you weren't, you thought it was just natural that they did all those things for you. So, I think it's a real, it's just, it's hurtful or it hurts me to think of the people that don't have that relationship. So let me bring
So,
everybody down with that.
well, I don't think that that's being brought down at all. I'm obviously speaking from a perspective of having, kids in the household and a very specific type about mothering, and I understand mothering can come in different fashions, but also you bring it up. I mean, it could bring up grief, it could bring up loss. So like from your perspective, how do you get through the holiday with that?
Well, you know what? I just like to remember or honor that part of me that I got from my mom and try to remember the things, those moments that still stand out and those lessons that she taught. And, you know, um, they aren't, I was going to say they're not all good. That's not true. They are all good and they were all given with love. But I look back on them and I was like, my mom was bonkers on that point. She had no idea. And that's okay. You do the best you can as a parent. And I think sometimes, you know, it's not really right or wrong. It's, the kids are going to see it differently and they're going to grow up to be adults that are different. That's the beauty of life. And so, but I do just remember them, not so much right or wrong, but just they were heartfelt, they were important. And that's, those are things, again, sometimes to my detriment that are inside of me. Um, I had, that it lent me a lot of things to practice with and practice on because I'm different. But again, what it was given to me was given in love, and I'm grateful for that.
I just started to consider the whole childhood wound idea. And I don't like, a bunch of flair when it comes to therapy words, but I think that it's worth addressing for a lot of people because people aren't perfect when they become parents, like you said. It's not like you become a mom and then all of a sudden you're fixed and you're patient and you're all knowing and you are just pure love because a lot of the hiccups just come too. And from a mom standpoint, when I'm mothering, I am fully aware of my faults. But I'm also fully aware of my love for my children. So it kind of coincides and coexists in a really funny way where mothering is a lot about reflection towards yourself. And it can be a great tool. And so, when you start to think of your mom, and when I start to think of my mom, she's sick with, stage 4 cancer right now. And so it's made things very present in the sense of she's here and I don't know how long for, and I don't know what our future looks like. So I, question how I would answer, kind of those grief questions that I asked you earlier. But, with the whole mothering concept, it can just be so complex, and simplifying it too is also much easier, because if I get hard on myself anytime I think I've strayed from this idea of being a perfect mom, that's just straight into the, that's straight into the deep end of suffering.
Right, right. How has being a mother influenced your practice, you think?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I I wondered what questions you were going to ask me, and I figured that one would come up. And recently, I'll be honest, I my practice has been on the back burner. I've been just go, 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 go. I got a new job, and I thought it was going to be interesting talking about a practice when I'm in a lull period, because I definitely don't want to be hypocritical, but it takes effort and it takes concentration to implement a practice into your life thoroughly and marry it into everything. And it's funny when just because you're aware of it, you're aware that there is a practice and these terminologies that can help you, doesn't mean you always listened. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean you always invite it in. So it's really funny when I invite my practice and I practice, I actually do the work, my mothering changes completely. But if I'm off, then I can be neurotic. All my tendencies, sometimes they call them character defects, and it's a funny term, but it's like a shadow. You can't run away from. So yeah, there's different versions of mothering. When I'm in my practice, I think I'm patient and I can see through the things that would maybe annoy me. I could stand my ground better and I have more energy. But if I am opposite of it, then yeah, it's pretty much, the duality of it. I'm tired, I'm grumpy, I'm short, I'm impatient, and I don't want to play.
So it sounds like the balance,
Yeah.
right, between because motherhood is not really like any other that I can think of, any other responsibility that you take on or role that you play. Not even wife or partner or husband, because it's an extra layer of closeness to this other person that you've agreed to basically shepherd forever. You'd love to say, well, at 18, but that's not true. I have kids older than that, and you know, um, it doesn't change how you feel just because they're older and you're older. They're still your kids. So is there a way to address that balance or to maybe tilt it in your favor or is it just day by day?
I mean, I know the things that work, and it's just recognizing and then putting it into action. So, I like being on the podcast in all sorts of where I'm at when I'm practicing and in it, and when I'm out of it. I'll just rather be honest. I think that it's how I identify with the concept of being a mom. It's tricky to label yourself as anything, even in a role, because then you can start to try to perfect it, or you can try to control it, or you can try to project it, just really any of those things. So I have to be careful. If I know if I don't self-care and if I don't take care of myself, then I can't be anything I identify with. And that means a friend, a worker, a mom.
Yeah. So what do you think, or what's the most maybe Buddhist teaching or Buddhist mantra that is helpful for for that role, do you think? I mean, and it doesn't have to necessarily apply to you personally. It can be more of a general answer if you want, but I feel like we're putting you on the spot quite a bit to represent and defend all mothers. So,
No, it's
of course,
okay,
that's
because
what you agreed to do.
I don't know the difference between Buddha and the Beatles sometimes. So I just My mantra became let it be. And
Yeah. Yeah, that works for both of them. That works for
yeah.
both of them.
Yeah.
So with children, obviously there's a pretty big age difference.
Yeah.
Do they, this is more of a kid question, but do you see a lot of the two of them? I mean, I know there's some differences and we don't have to get into that, but do you see a lot of likeness at this point between their either their personalities or what they do or how they act? Um, or is it too early for the 1 year old and too late for the 17
No.
year old?
Yeah, no, I was afraid of that. I wondered, and they're actually in the other room sleeping with each other. Like
Mm,
she's on her and she's comfy in the chair. And it brings out youth, it brings out playfulness from her. And she's able to just kind of, he invites her into play and she plays. And it's so fun to see. I mean, I was afraid of the judgment because people, as soon as I was pregnant, they were like, "You're starting over. Why would you do that? You were so close." And I was like, that was such a weird thing for me because having a baby, a small person in the house is like, it's a little insane, but it's also like insane in this fun, good way where you're tripping over toys. And I will say that the blessings of Buddhism have taught me impermanence. So when I stub my toe on something in the middle of the night, I know I can be grateful for it because at one point those toys won't be there. And I know that
right.
because I've already been through that with my daughter. And you don't even recognize it. One time at one point they were there in the room, and then I go in her room now and it looks like a young adult. And I'm like, what happened?
Yeah. There's a weird time lapse being a parent. You know,
Yes.
there are things that come and go and they kind of it's a little bit like watching a flower bloom in that you can sit there and stare at it, but you got to have a lot of time and a lot of patience to really see the changes. So you live with it and you take care of it, but then all of a sudden you notice, at some point it's changed. And children are a little bit like that. You're so close to them that it's hard to notice those key moments. Um, and it's also funny as you go through it, what you end up missing. And for me personally, some of the things that I at the time maybe didn't find to be the most enjoyable aspect of parenting or of being a dad, I look back on and go, man, I kind of wish, I kind of miss those times. Um, the I don't know, the going to concerts, I sat through a couple of really interesting, fourth grade string concerts and, dance recitals. And it's not that they were bad or good, they were bad, but what it was it wasn't, it wasn't my thing. So it's interesting how you have to put on different hats and really have to expand to it and also still be grumpy about it when you have to do it. So
Yeah, I am grateful. And I know some people don't want children out there too. And I know, we can be really woohoo and there's dog moms. My sister's a dog mom, and I swear to God, I never really I thought those were cheesy hats and shirts that people wore. But
yeah,
these dogs, I actually think that they have a better life than me sometimes. She's great. And I think the concept of mothering can just be applied to anything that you truly love and take care of. If you put effort into raising, feeding, effort into nurturing and you tap into the softer side because I do think that there is a little duality to the fathering and to the mothering, but it can coexist too. But there's softness that I think that comes with mothering too that kind of like blossoms in everyone. And whether you love your mom or you can't stand her and you're not on talking terms, zooming out and just viewing your parents as people was probably one of the biggest epiphanies and healing that I could. And one of the things that I install in my children is to, hey, look, I'm your mother, but I'm also Jordan. I'm also a person. So I don't
wow.
know if that's taboo.
Well, but you know what? I think it's one of those things that some people do kind of uh, for whatever reason. Some families are structured that way, that mom's always going to be mom and dad's always going to be dad, and we're not, that's all we need to know about them, kind of. And I think it is a real, I think it shows real maturity and real wisdom to share that, to get that out it makes it sound like it's taboo. It really shouldn't be, but I know families that have always treated it that way. You know,
Yeah.
you didn't call your dad by his first name. I'm not saying you should do that or not. That's entirely up to the family, but everybody needs to understand that it's a big role to be a parent, but it's not the only role.
Right.
You know, and if you treat it as the only role, whether you're the parent we're talking about or the child in this relationship, it can be crippling. It can be just too much. You know, you've got to be true to yourself first and foremost. Um, that makes me sound like a really selfish, bad dad, but I do believe that you know that's the key to being a good parent is to being present and honest and open.
And a bit selfish, I think, because that is a way to fool yourself to think that you can pour your glass completely empty while taking care of other people.
Yeah.
You have to have those reservations. You know, I don't know how many times I've ran around the house, cooked dinner, did the laundry, and burned myself completely out and then couldn't even enjoy the situation anymore because,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. You know, and I think a lot of people fall into that trap of I'm going to be the best parent and
yeah,
that's what my life is going to be. And it's like, well, you know, that's not really what anybody needs, including your children. Also, those children, you know, are going to grow up and going to move on. And then who are you? Then what are you? You know?
this is going in a very Freudian direction.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. It's taken a weird turn, but I do think that's true. Again, I think I think we both know and seen people where being a mom. Which, by the way, this was supposed to be a celebration of mothers. Now I've decided to list all the things I don't like about moms. No, but some people, you
No.
know, it becomes so enveloping and, you know, kind of like to your metaphor, their glass becomes full, but only in that role of mother, you know, and it's
Yeah.
not good for the kids and it's not good for them. And again, who are you when this is over, when this changes?
And mother is just, I mean, it can be just, it can be expansion and growth and nurturing yourself. Like, I mean, there's like Mother Earth. I mean, we could really branch off of it.
Right,
It's a
right.
bad joke, but but what I'm saying too is like I don't want to exclude the people who like again aren't just parents. It's just a way. It's a way of life, just like it can be, you know, a an influence in your life to just be a good person. You know, you can be doiting, doiting and kind and loving to the people that you just met, and you can come on in, have a hug, let me feed you. Let me, do you want water? You can try to notice the good in the world. And, you know, I know I'm going on like a love tangent, but it really is about loving with unbearable compassion. It really is loving, you know, regardless if you're in pain and if you're, I think when cynicism starts to creep into the heart, it just takes everything, you know, because there's so much magic that comes from just authentically caring and compassion that keeps the magic there.
I think that's well said. It brought up in me the idea that not having been a mother, the definition I might offer for that role, you know, is that ability to put other people's needs first.
Mm,
Your
yeah.
children is the obvious answer, but as you just said, it's not exclusive to that relationship. You can bring that to anybody or with anybody. And I think that's a great point if you happen to be somebody who maybe doesn't have a great relationship with their mom. You know,
Absolutely.
regardless of what you were taught as a child. And I know that's a lot, and I know that's, you know, that's the next thousand podcasts if that's what you wanted it to be, because relationships with your mom are difficult for some people. Even those good ones still leave a weird or a, you know, a lasting imprint, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. But if you are somebody who maybe doesn't have, you know, that type of relationship where you would celebrate it no matter what you're doing with your mother now, I think it's important to understand that you can embrace the strengths of that relationship and that this is a big ramble and I'm enjoying it, but also that, because when you put other people first, it feels good. It feels good for you. That love you give comes back to you. Now we're back to the Beatles with, the love you take. So
Love it.
do you find all that to be true though as a mom? Can you embrace that? Is that enough for your practice now?
Yes, I try to practice what I preach 100%. So when I get off here, of course, I'm going to call my mom, or I'm going to go give my kids a hug, or maybe I'll go do something nice for a stranger. Or I truly think it's so easy. When the thought pops in your brain to do something compassionate for yourself or compassionate for another person, just act on it. I think that's the biggest takeaway because it happens. When you start paying attention to it, it'll be like a quiet little whisper at first. And sometimes when I'm checking out, it'll just be like, I see somebody buying something small behind me or whatever, and I'll just buy it, or just, that paying forward, or, trying to help out when somebody's has their hands full and the door's open. Just those really compassionate parts of life are just, you got to pay attention to it, and then you're able to operate from a standpoint. It's like a reverb. You get to give it and then you get it back, and you get to give it and you get it. It's like an echo chamber or something. So when I'm in my negative headspace, it becomes a negative echo chamber. I'm not able to do any of the things that I want to do. So it's important to take care of yourself, to mother yourself.
And and the other thing that again popped up for a non-mother in this conversation is the importance of recognizing, and this is hard for children, but at some point, 12 or 15 or at 45, at some age as a child, it's important that you understand, even if it's retroactively, that motherhood is a challenge and sometimes it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Sometimes and maybe you could speak on that. What drives that feeling, you think, and how do you manage that?
Overstimulation is what drives me insane. So, I I require a lot of alone time. I require nature. I require time to gather my thoughts. And uh, being present literally doesn't always offer that. So it's important for me to recognize before I yell or before I get frustrated and say something that I don't want to have to take back, that I pause. So, I think it's not even my most challenging role, I'll be honest with you. Working is harder for me. I don't like, you know, the working concept is like, I work in an office now, and so I really feel funny. I'm like a closeted Buddhist because I work in a law firm, and I don't even I don't even know how I ended up there, but I did, and so it's really funny. And so in comparison to when I kind of shift through my roles, um, I know that I got to take care of myself even in my other roles. So when I come back to being a mom, I can be good, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
that's important.
Yeah, I think most of my I didn't get in a lot of trouble, but as a kid, I'm naturally a smart aleck. I think laughter is the most important thing, so I have no problems with crossing boundaries when I think there might be a joke at the end of it. And I'm still that way, and it's probably, I don't know if it's a good trait or not, but it is who I am. So with my mom, for example, there were times when being a smart aleck was more important than being respectful. Now, not that I ever pushed it, and I think she understood that about me, but I think back to times when maybe my mom was overstimulated and overstressed. And she was a very good mom. Mostly it was there may be a danger element, maybe uh yeah, not that there was a lot of danger either in my life. But again, I can just remember, and it took me a long time to understand that there's another whole level to being a mom. It's not just that you love and you put your kids first. It's that is so important. It can be uh, you know all consuming, I think. And so it's very difficult. And I don't think there's any way to avoid that, right? Sometimes it's just there's illness, there's unknown, there's just the overall stress of the job. And I think it's so interesting that I'm interested in the fact that anybody would take that job on because it is so big, and
Yeah.
most of the moms I know do it with a kind, loving heart and do such a great job. But I
You've
guess
got
that's
me
also nature.
curious. You've got me curious to speak to people who are mothering in different ways, because I probably only have this one perspective. And I know that it's important to, speak to other people and have that community expression, just to understand. So it's interesting. Yeah, I guess I only share one perspective from this, which is interesting because, like my sister, I still consider her a mom, even though, she had a baby that passed at 24 weeks and it's her only one. And, my niece, I still refer to her as that. My mom, my sis, we still call my sister a mom, and so there's painful reasons why you're a mom too. And yeah, it's exploratory. I think that it'd be worth, you've definitely sparked this conversation just to say, hey, let me hear from you.
Do you think Western Buddhism does a pretty good job of appreciating and the role of mothers? Is that, I know that's a big question, but just top of your head,
Yeah, I
go.
don't go. I think so. I think that we're inclusives. I just, when you ask me that, I think of our own community here at TBC, just how we practice close to home. And, I definitely feel that women that, uh, you know, mothers, any labeling to any kind of lifestyle is supported, and it's a resort. Everybody's welcome. It's
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think TBC in particular and Western Buddhism in general does a great job of that. Um, so before we call it good, any Mother's Day advice or wisdom you'd like to share with other moms or kids or anyone at all from that view or that role?
save the artwork because that is so important. It's so cute later. And don't forget to drink some water.
That's always good. That's always good
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah. Just be
Jordan,
practical.
thank you so much for being on. Really appreciate your wisdom and your candor regarding Mother's Day and also the role that, what the role is to you. There was a lot of you in this episode. I really appreciate that.
Thank
Um,
you.
Also, you're a great co-host and a great friend. So thank you to you. I also want to thank everyone who listens and supports this offering. We can be found on Spotify, YouTube, and on the TBC Discord channel. Feel free to leave a comment on any of those platforms or email us at omontherange podcast@gmail.com. This is Whit signing off from Om on the Range headquarters, wishing you happy Mother's Day and happy trails. Thanks to our Om on the Range production team for making this program possible, and to Mr. Brad Athey for composing and performing the original music. And to you, our listeners, thank you for being a part of this journey as we explore meditation, Western Buddhism, and the path towards a happier, healthier life. Remember, less suffering and more joy are available to everyone. It just takes practice. Until next time, stay grounded, stay kind, and keep finding peace in the simple, practical things. For all of us here at Om on the Range, happy trails.